Welcome to another episode of Decide to Heal. I am your host, Alejandra Crisafulli. Okay, I was recently listening to a very popular self-helper who you probably know and love because she's been around for a long time and has done many great things in the self-help industry. And this reel really struck me. One, because I've already been spending a lot of time with the subject in which she was talking about for a new product that is being developed for the 180 method. But it's just something that most human beings struggle with. And it has to do with the idea of control. Now, before I share who and what was said, this podcast and what we're really about here is healing, not dealing, right? There's a big difference. We've talked a lot about that difference and what genuinely is healing versus this dealing place. And a lot of traditional self-help can fall into the dealing. Now, that's not to discount what it's about. Hey, it's helpful. It's a great tool. It's just the difference between, do you want to spend your life managing a 360 cycle, having to constantly be present enough to be able to manage or deal with the things that are coming up in your relationship, your money, your health, your business, your thoughts, your feelings, even your spirituality? It's a choice as to how you approach things. For me, having been in the industry for so long, I did not want to continue dealing anymore. It was exhausting. I constantly felt like I was failing, and it just perpetuated a 360 for myself that did not lead anywhere but just despair and ultimately led into my breakdown. So again, like when I share with you what this is, you probably know and love her. This in no way is disqualifying who she is or what she's about or what she proclaims. I'm just offering a different perspective that if you are tuning into this episode, you're here for a reason, and you have to trust that God let you here for something specifically for you to hear around this. Okay, so let's talk about what this reel was. Okay, so let's talk about what this reel was. And it was by Mel Robbins. And she was talking about her new book, Let Them, and this concept around controlling. And she was saying that you're missing out like on the beauty of life because you're too busy trying to control others rather than being able to control yourself. And she was saying that there's always three things that you can control. You can control what you think. You can control what you do or don't do. And you can control what you do in response to the feelings that you have rising up. So I want to say yes, but. Yes, but. Because we have to be careful here about what we are learning around this topic of control. If it's misunderstood or misused, it can cause actually more havoc and ruin and hardship in your life than it can good. So let me explain why, and let's talk about the other side of this controlling and why it could possibly be detrimental if not used in the best way. So I want to talk about the heart of control. And listen, control is a form of a behavior, and every human being has behaviors. We talked a little bit about this in my last solo episode. And behaviors are just a way in which we act. They are picked up throughout life, mainly from our parents during a time that is a hardship for you. It's a time that you don't feel good and you're just looking to feel better. And the only thing or way you know how to do that is to observe someone and you see them doing a certain type of behavior, like controlling, and you learn how to do that yourself. So it can become this unhealthy habit instead of it being something that is actually supportive. think about the heart of control, and it's depending on what part of the spectrum you are on. Control can look very different and be, again, something that's very challenging. Here are some common characteristics of control. It's a characteristic of being proud, like having a prideful heart. Control can fundamentally mean that your trust is in self and not in God. And the Bible speaks often of this idea. It's in Psalm 4:5, Proverbs 3:5, Isaiah 26:3, Peter 2:21 through 25. So essentially, it's talking about controlling and trust, because you cannot actually release control without having trust. And they're two things that go very much so together. And a person who trusts in self is leaning upon their own finite understanding to judge what is right, what is good, what is best. And it develops this very specific expectation on how circumstances should play out, or how people should respond, or what should be happening for you. So this is what makes it very challenging to say that, yes, you have control over these three things: your thoughts, what you do or don't do, or the response you have to your feelings, because it comes from that very prideful place, thinking, I have the ultimate control, and it causes a separation between you and God. And you're basically saying, I do not trust you, and I have to control myself in a certain way in order to get the outcome that I am wanting, that I think I need, that I feel I should have. Even if it's something around a thought that you're trying to change that isn't a healthy or a positive thought for you. Even if it's something that you're trying to do that's in a response to a negative feeling that's coming up. So we're talking about the downside of this, and I'm going to offer something totally different from where Mel was coming from. And again, that's more on the healing side of it versus the dealing side, and your choice, whether you take it or leave it. So hold on, because I will be covering, like, okay, if it's not control, and if I don't have control of these three things, then what have I control over? And how can I have a life that is full of joy and aliveness and goodness? So we'll address that. Stick with me, okay? Control often places a person's individual will before God's. That's that whole, like, I don't trust you. It's what I want, what I think I need. And you're placing that before God. Or it could also be where others are self-centered as judgments and expectations that are all being formed for this. And that attitude is the opposite of what Jesus prayed for in the Garden of Gethsemane. If you remember or know that scripture, he was saying, Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done. So as much as Jesus, who is God in the human form, who relinquished his sovereignty, his almightiness to be in this human form, is giving his will, his control up to God, shouldn't we? Shouldn't we be trusting in that too? Okay, another point here around control is that it focuses its hope on circumstances and not on God and his promises. Do you know that there's I want to say there's 836 promises. Don't quote me on that, but it is over 800 promises in the Bible that God has made to us. That's crazy. That's insane. How many promises? This just shows how much he loves us, and how much, if we just trust him, he fulfills his promises. He is not a liar. He's not. So, as a person forms a circumstantial expectation of what is best, like if I'm like, no, I know what is best for me, what is right for me, what is good for me, then that shapes what I hope will happen or what I hope to bring into my life, into my life. And it sets this tone as though, again, I'm the one in control when really I am not. And it puts this expectation of like, I am projecting because I think I have control over this, that this particular outcome is going to happen. And as circumstances turn out differently than what I hope for or what you might hope for in your controllingness, it can make your heart just sick. It can be, just so disheartening. And this is also spoken about in the Bible. Proverbs 13:12 talks about this, and it can just make us so sick. So if you've been feeling in some way like disappointment, it might be because you've been trying to control even yourself, your thoughts, your feelings, what you're doing. And yeah, there's disappointment there. It's because you're trying to use something that really isn't meant for us to be used. There's something else God has given us that has so much more power behind it than control can or ever will. So I hope you're getting that. Yeah. Controlling is hard, essentially. It is a dealing thing and it's exhausting and it can lead to disappointment and overwhelm, essentially. Frustration, just, ugh. Like I remember many times in my life being stuck in that place and even hearing from clients situations that they've been stuck in. You've probably heard or seen some of the coaching sessions we've done where that's showing up and it's exhausting. Control can also put a person in a place of God. So those of you who struggle with control, trust is in your own reasoning and often only in a practice. It turns away from God's wisdom and believing, it's like believing in your own will and that's best. And it's consequently you wanting to have this thing accomplish. And it's almost like, again, I'm playing God instead of giving it to God. I'm not God. I don't have that ability. Yes, we are made in his image. We're going to talk about that also. But I am, at the end of the day, not God. And what this does is it can often reveal emotions like anger and discouragement and depression and anxiety or fear. Okay, so let's look at some other consequences of control, because I think this was helpful for me because very much so, one of my dominant behaviors was control. Controlling, avoidance, and manipulative. Defensive was also a big one, but oh my goodness, controlling was the biggest one. And there's consequences to this. Some of them we've already talked about, but let me just shine the light on it again, that being worn out, that's that overwhelm. Like if you're in a burnout state, it's probably because you've been trying to control a lot or do things perfectly. With perfection and controlling go very much so hand in hand. They complement each other very well. And it's super discouraging when you're trying to control things that only God can truly control. Another consequence is having a hard time forgiving. If you've ever been in that place of like, I know I'm supposed to forgive and just let go of this situation, but it is difficult. It's like, and I just had a client ask me this the other day. They were like, why can't I just let go? Because you're playing God. You're trying to control something that is not in your ability to do. There's all sorts of wide-ranging fallouts that can happen as well. And it's just another way to reinforce what's actually happening in society right now. It's more anxiety and depression and disappointment, and those things are at an ultimate high right now. So why is that? A lot of it has to do with, again, we're trying to play God and not trusting in him. And when life doesn't go our way, it's like we spin around and try and get into more control and lack of trust. You can also strain and destroy your relationships with this, since your focus is on fulfilling of self and not serving God and others. So there's a lot of consequences that come from this. This illusion of control, because control is an illusion. It's basically the desire for control can be this pride. I was sharing that earlier. It's very prideful, and it can lead to anxiety and frustration. And control involves exerting influence, basically. We're exerting this influence over our external circumstances, people, outcomes, and ourself. And it is driven often by a desire for predictability. Because if we have that predictability, it's like, okay, at least I know. And if I know, then I'm okay. Then I can handle things. Then everything's going to be all right. Now, I want to start talking about more of where I think Mel was really going with this, but this distinction is truly important. I love distinctions because they serve us in ways that you cannot even imagine. Example, when you're a child and you learn that there's a door, like you can't walk through this seemingly, large wall, and you see this door and it's closed, like you don't know it's a door until you've learned, oh, hey, that's a door, or someone's taught you this is a door, or you're observing someone actually walk through a door, like opening the door to get through this big wall. Oh, now I'm able to get into the other room. So we learn at some point there's a door. Now, opening of a door is another thing, because there's some doors that have handles that you have to push. There's some doors that have handles that you have to pull. There's some doors that are sliding that you have to slide to the side. There's some doors that you have to lift from the bottom all the way up. It's not, every door is not the same. So we can't just call a door a door. A door opens in different ways, and you have to learn the distinctions of each door in order for you to be able to walk through to the other side, so to speak. So it's very metaphorical in that in your life, it's the same thing. Like my office door has a handle. If I never learned how to open that door by twisting the knob and pushing, I would still be stuck outside of that. I'd never be able to get into my office. I have to know the distinction. I can't just call it a door with a handle and think that I can get in by pushing on it like every other door I've seen in my life. Does this make sense? I hope this is making sense, because I know that was, an interesting observation. But distinctions are important. So here again is what I think that Mel was really trying to get to. This difference between control and self-control. So we've talked a lot about what control is. Self-control, on the other hand, is about regulating your own emotions, impulses, and behaviors, focusing on an internal discipline to achieve personal goals and uphold your core being values, essentially God's values. That's what we're talking about. Self-control, not just control. So in Genesis 1, verses 26 through 31, so important to what we're talking about here and how God actually designed us. So it states, and God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over the cattle and over all the earth and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. Okay, so God gave us dominion and he made us in his image and after his likeness. So is God controlling or does he have power? Does God control or does he have power? Again, distinction. Think about that for a second. God has power, supreme power and authority. So we ourselves have power through him because he lives within us. Control is a very human-based thing that is learned throughout your human life and human experience. That is why this distinction is so important. Control is all about dealing on the human side. Power is all about healing on the being side. Human being. Being is what we truly are. Human is what we are while we're here in this fallen world. So I'll come back to the self-control piece in just a moment, but the supreme power and authority, that's what we have. It's a sovereignty. That's what it is. And we have that sovereignty over ourselves too. So let's come back to the self-control piece because it is spoken about many times in the Bible. Control is not spoken about. Power is because of the very thing we were just talking about, but control is not. Self-control, however, is in many places. Proverbs 25:28 states, "A person without self-control is like a city with broken down walls." I love that. It's so good. Okay, let's go deeper into self-control. It's one of the fruits of the Spirit, as I mentioned, and it's a sign that Christ lives in us. And if we let our desires lead our decisions, our choices, our lives, and everything that's included in that, our bodies, our relationships, all of it, we can quickly spin out of control, which then has us go into that, okay, I just have to control. But it's not control, y'all. It's a self-control. And this is a discipline that God grows within us when we continually choose to die to our flesh and live in him. Basically, when we choose to surrender our ego that edges God out and reconnect to him, living in him. So it's self-control that we really want to focus in on because that fruit of the Spirit is, oh my goodness, y'all, like, I know you've had an experience of it that's very different than control or controlling. It is an innate, natural experience when you're not trying to come from a place of, I don't feel good, I don't feel safe, I'm disappointed, anxious, fearful, whatever those things are. So I need to control my environment and myself to try and feel better. That is such a human, powerless place. When you're in the being part of you, this new self that has Christ in you, this fruit of the Spirit, it's called a fruit for a reason. It's vibrant, it's fresh, it's life-giving. It's a totally different experience. Okay, so I want to come back to this biblical perspective of, you know, us having dominion, made in his image, that whole power part. While humans we have agency and we can make choices. The ultimate power resides with God, who works all things according to his will, even though we have our choices and circumstances. So yes, we have that same image of him. He is able to make choices. He creates circumstances. Well, so do we. We have choices and we create circumstances, but he has the ultimate. Okay. So there's a more detailed explanation to this. Basically, God's sovereignty emphasizes that he is supreme authority and power over all things. Okay, which includes us. He's supreme. I just learned this word and I love it. It's like music on my lip. Like it's just, oh, it feels so good. Which is Elohim. Elohim. Oh, so good. Which states he is creator, power, ultimate power and creator. So human agency, while God has the ultimate power, we as humans are not just mere puppets. Like again, we're made in his image, which means we have free will and the ability to make choices. So God has a plan for us as his creation, and he works all things, including our choices, to accomplish those purposes. Trusting God's power instead of trying to control everything is incredibly healing. And it feels like you have someone within you on your side. You're not alone. And this comes through being encouraged that you can trust his sovereignty and seek his guidance because he has your ultimate, like everything at heart. So how do we bring this all together? There is something that we were talking about this whole time, and I'm not sure that you picked up on it, that is much more, just so much more fulfilling and healing that control is. And even it leans more on the self-control coming from that place of trusting God and allowing that fruit of his spirit to come through to bring forth that fruit. And it's through our choices. What Mel was really talking about isn't control. And it's not even really self-control. It's choice. So if you are wondering, what is the difference here? Again, we go into distinctions. You know I love this. Here it is. Tune into how this feels, not just what I'm saying. I want you to tune into how it feels because this is what I've been talking about between the difference of healing and dealing. This is all about choice. So, distinction. Listen, tune in how it feels. Choice is the act of selecting among alternatives, emphasizing personal freedom and autonomy. Control, however, involves exerting influence or authority over situations, outcomes, or others, and it's often focusing on managing and directing rather than simply selecting. Now, when I looked at this myself and I was putting this into my notes, I was like, okay, wow, I felt the freedom in choice and selecting among my alternatives. I have a choice in every moment, not control. I have a choice to react a certain way. I have a choice to feed a particular thought or not. I have the choice to trust God in that moment. I have choice to be in power or to be the victim of. Choice is a beautiful thing. That's actually what Mel's talking about, is choice. And when you allow choice, you allow God in versus I need to control out of the fear of or the unknown, because if I don't have control, then something bad is going to happen, which just ultimately leads back to childhood situations that have not yet been fully healed, have not yet been fully surrendered, that your ego still wants to take on this pride place that I have control. and that I can make all things better through controlling. No. If that would have been the case, you would have already felt better. You would have had long lasting changes occurring, not just for a short period of time or as long as you have enough awareness to be able to control, but then you fall right back. Okay, so today was kind of deep and there was a lot there. So I would suggest listening to this again and dissecting these big things. So the big topics we really talked about was around control and what that actually gets you and where it's actually coming from. We talked about self-control and the difference between control and self-control. And then we've talked about choice. So, which one do you want to live into? All right, my friend, thank you for tuning in. I hope this episode blessed you in a way that gets you thinking and really pondering upon your own life and the choices that you're actually making and where you're trying to control that is really only causing you more frustration and suffering. And if you can switch to choice, knowing that God lives inside of that and he has ultimate power and authority, then he'll turn anything that you do into something good. All right. Love you. I will see you on the next episode of Decide to Heal. We go higher to the